Dr. Yamini Meduri is the founder of Why Mindset India and a researcher and educator whose work focuses on disaster management, smart cities, and resident urban development. Our research includes disaster resilient smart cities and personnel needs assessment during crisis, with emphasis on strengthening India's smart city mission through improved disaster preparedness, and through improved disaster preparedness. So through our work, she contributes to discussion on resilient city, disaster management, and sustainable urban planning, supporting the development of our systems better equipped to respond to climate-related and emergency challenges. Dr. Yamini Meduri, thank you so much for honoring this invitation. The
Thank
floor
you.
is.
Thank you. So thank you so much for inviting me to talk at your conference. I really appreciate the kind of content that you're bringing together for disaster resilience, and especially because I work in the disaster resilience, and I'd seen your themes and the kind of discussions that you are bringing in. I think disaster management or resilience, preparedness, recovery systems are something that kind of had become timeless, because I remember when I started my research in almost 12, 14 years ago. It was a very, very important topic, and we said, okay, this is something that we have to think about, and every organization, every country, every policymaker has to think about it. And 15 years, and today we are still talking about policymakers. We're still talking about how disaster resilience or mitigation, for that matter, is still not a part of the discussions. So today I would like to talk about urban resilience, and especially I'm going to talk about a few case studies from India, especially those case studies where resilience did not really happen, and or did not really was a part of the larger discussion, and where resilience and mitigation was a part of the discussion, and how the impact changed. So before I get there, there are certain parameters which we generally use for evaluating a city, if it's a developed city or not, and how well is the city really, mm, you know, contributing to development. And most of the time, the development is about the economic contribution, and how well what is the lifestyle of the people there, and how it is the economic upliftment that happens in a city. And in India, most of our cities have been placed in mostly populated areas, and most of our earlier settlements were around the seashore or around a riverbed, on the banks of a river. And most of our land is agricultural, and naturally there were a lot of formations that happened. But over the years, we are not really, the conversations around disasters, around development, sorry, are not really happening in terms of how good our land is. But the concentration is more about the infrastructure, how beautiful the infrastructure is, how much can we cater to the current economic development, and how how well is your city design. And 10 years ago, close to 10, 12 years, we had at the national level talk of a smart city mission. Smart city mission started off picking up 100 cities, 100 tier 2, tier 3 kind of a city, tier 1, tier 2 cities, which were towns back then, which were brought into the smart city mission, and said, okay, these are the cities that have to be developed, new cities that have to be developed, and the entire infrastructure. So that was almost a 10-year long plan, and how these cities will contribute to the economic development. And so most of the smart city mission that we're talking about was talking about developing infrastructure, creating an inclusive infrastructure, creating technology, access to technology, ensuring that everybody has access to the kind of tech that largely developed cities were having access to. And also, the governance structure was revolving around the key objectives of the smart city mission. And the communities also were being trained to be a part of this development. So that's how the smart city mission was working. And we were actually, we kind of celebrated in India because that was the first time where we had a proper plan for my, Taiwan towns and a Tier 2 towns. So it was definitely celebrated and it was a big mission and everything was happening around it. However, the disaster management researchers here back home, we all had this one question when the smart city mission work plan was come out, or the policymakers designed the smart city mission. Are they really looking at smart cities as disaster resilient? Because the existing cities that we had, we're going to actually hear a few stories coming forward. The existing cities were not resilient, and recovery was becoming very, very difficult. So now that we are actually planning to make these cities, build these cities, or design these cities, are we really looking at disaster resilience or mitigation as a part of it? When we started looking at it, and we realized that's a biggest loophole, because every organization, every business, every government was only looking at development at the economic upfront, and even the social development was also there. The communities were uplifted, their lifestyles changed, their economic vulnerabilities were removed, and they were having a better life. However, I would say cities don't function. I mean, cities, everything will function well. Your roads are great, your economic development is happening, everything is working. All of it happens on a good day. But what happens on a bad day, that tells you if your cities are really resilient or not. What really happens on a bad day is not what happened on that day. So a lot of research around these disasters, especially focused in India. Now, why are we talking about India? Because India is a very, very different nation. When you compare it with compare economically, the kind of cultural backgrounds that we come from, the kind of community, the sense of community that we have here. The kind of population density that we have here, and the kind of problems that we deal with on a daily basis. So, and suddenly, none of us were talking about disaster recovery. Okay, so 100 years ago, nobody was talking about it. Agreed. 50 years ago, nobody was talking about it. Agreed. But at least the 21st century had shown us enough disasters, and we've lived so many experiences that we had to learn our lessons. But we were not ready for those bad days. And what happens when these, disasters really happen? They're not really happening on that day. Like, for example, we have two major stories that I would want to really talk about, because this is a recurring phenomena. And both of these states are not a part of the smart city mission. These are already developed, already the economic development is happening in that place, and not much of a discussion was happening around, do they have access to infrastructure, etc. Everything was taken care of, and people were only looking at a forward development. But what was happening in the background is, these states of Kerala and Tamil Nadu, the southernmost states of India. Um, they are our border states for, they have Arabian Sea on one side, Bay of Bengal on the other side, and the Indian Ocean um, beneath. So we have the two major seas and one ocean. So there's a vast coastline. Now, but the real problem was not the coastline at all, because the cyclones were prominent. The local communities and the indigenous knowledge of the local communities definitely helped, because they all knew what happens at a cyclone. They all knew, looking, the indigenous knowledge is so strong that they were prepared. So preparedness was never a problem. and they were able to, even the Indian Ocean tsunami is our biggest disaster that kind of taught us a lot of lessons, and India finally started looking at disaster management a little more seriously. And our disaster management association, the management academy that started after the Indian Ocean tsunami, but the lessons were learned. There were a lot of implementations, but they're still not coming to the grassroots level. Now, what is happening is, when we're looking at economic development, especially creating cities that are much better than the existing cities. Now, what happened was there is this unseen development, and people are talking about how there is a natural water flow, and especially our Western Ghats. The Western Ghats nature in India is like, it's very beautiful. It's actually created naturally. We have a lot of phenomena that is happening, that's there, which is helping us to mitigate a lot of these disasters to happen before happening. The Western Ghats, there was a lot of quarrying that was happening, a lot of mining that was happening, and the natural tendency of these Western Ghats to stabilize the slope of flood water, and because it's a heavy rainfall region, and it was allowing us to have a natural inclination, ensure that the water seepage is better, so that the flood water, there's not too much of flood water, and there was a natural resistance that was there. And what happened, because of the development, because of of a fancy development of economics that happened, so the environmental imbalance was created, especially in Western Ghats. A lot of environmentalists fought for it. A lot of environmentalists started talking about how important it is to build these systems, take care of the natural systems, because they're going to be a reason why disasters are going to hit you hard. Obviously, when economic development, when we're talking about economic development, we don't really tend to look at the problems, especially related to the climate and rapid urbanization, and insane tourism, insane concept of development had really created a great imbalance to the natural flow in Kerala. Now, how did the city like Tamil Nadu, or the state like Tamil Nadu, which is a different state altogether, get affected? Now, the story started in the Western Ghats, huge rainfall, heavy rainfall. Now, what happened? There are some 54 dams that were storing water in Kerala, and all of these dams were moving towards Tamil Nadu. So, whenever these reservoirs are full and the dams gates open, the water flows towards Tamil Nadu. And once what happened, overnight, there was a heavy, huge rainfall. The reservoirs were full, and these rainfall was happening, multiple times in the same year, in the same monsoon season, and the reservoirs were already full, and there was a heavy rainfall. Now, what happened, because of the ecological disturbance in the Western Ghats, the flood water emerged. And obviously, when we all know that when the rivers get diverted, when the natural barriers are removed, and you get into development, etc., there is, and because of the quarrying, what happened, the soil had become loose because of the uh, you know uh, all the explosions that happen when we quarry the mountains. And then there is and the rivers got into their natural flow, the river reservoirs took the natural flow, and they wept. Now, what happened is, overnight Tamil Nadu saw flood. Now, they did not see rainfall. It wasn't rain that was creating the flood, and there's a